For the third quarter report, know that at 3 o'clock today I met with the 5 members of the city's audit committee appointed by you all, and all 5 members were present and accounted for. We reviewed the report that I provided to you in advance. That was the same report I reviewed with them earlier today. Our meeting today lasted 90 minutes. My presentation today will be shorter. So I just wanted to summarize what, in a couple minutes, what was said, and I'd be glad to take any questions. We review, I did 3 things this quarter, as most quarters, at the meeting. First one was to review my audit on continuous monitoring of the financial reports. Second, the particular subject of an audit this quarter, as planned, was on public works, the quality control over paving. And then we talked about the plans for the remainder of the year, 1 quarter left. So, as far as continuous monitoring of the financial report, what I noticed about the financial report is that it has grown over the years. And as people ask questions, the staff goes ahead and incorporates an additional schedule or 2 into the financial report. Then maybe the question doesn't have to come up the next time because it's already answered. And that's what I'm finding the more quarters I look at the report. More and more, the answer is already there. In the latest report, the information that is new has to do with council expenditures, as has been discussed both in DeKalb County. There's recently been some trouble related to transparency of what commissioners were spending money on, and now the city of Dunwoody is producing schedules that shows what the council is spending money on, whether it be the discretionary fund as it's known, or any other amounts of money. So anyhow, I thought that was a nice addition to the financial report. You know, you don't have to wait for a request for public information. Just disclose it as you go along. I looked at the report. I had some comments that I gave to the staff related to the wording of some columns. I had no problem with what was being disclosed there. And overall, I drew the same conclusion that I have had in the previous times I've looked at it, which is I gave negative assurance that nothing came to my attention that the money was being spent outside the charter or ordinances or budget. That would be my report on the first item. On the second one, and this was at the request of Chris Pike originally, is to do a review in the paving area. First was on the process for determining roads to be paved, and then second on the quality control procedures of roads that have been paved. On the process, I found the process impressive and best practices as far as the determinations that are made. You have that, I'll call it the Star Wars looking truck that comes to town, says what the road conditions are, gives it a numeric evaluation. CPAs like that numeric evaluations.
Planners too.
And then the council funds the paving based on the dollar amount to determine. So many percentage goes to major roads, so many goes to more residential roads. Very nice formula. Michael Smith mentioned to me that here in Dunwoody, there's never been a road paved in front of the mayor, sitting mayor, or a sitting council member's home while they were on the council. on there. I thought that was just a nice
Not
footnote.
hardly.
You gotta take it, if it's your street, you gotta take it off, and then when you're off, then.
It's not so good for your neighbors.
I gotta tell you, your neighbors are not happy.
Right.
I've got a for sale sign in my house now.
For sale by neighbor.
Hey, I'm just a citizen. I think I like that as a citizen, whatever.
As long as we're not your neighbor. Might make the road page.
And then on the separate item of the quality control of the roads that have been paved, I was very impressed with the procedures used then, which is a concurrent procedure when the road is being paved. A separate independent quality control company looks at the temperature and the weight and the number of inches that are being put on the road, and certainly Michael Smith will get into more of those details than he did with me. But I think that's very impressive to one, have such a service. Not every city does such things as to have a concurrent review, and the results are positive when you have an inspector right on site as the independent inspector as the roads are paved. So the other thing I looked at related to the contracts was that, and they are some of the bigger contracts for paving. We looked at the properly bid in accordance with the procedures. Any ones I looked at, the lowest bid was always taken, with one kind of exception where the lowest bid was taken, but then when the due diligence was being done, it turns out that people were not able to deliver on what they bid on, so they moved on to the next one. Also, so all that is very positive. The third thing we talked about is the next quarter's review, and the next quarter's review is going, as planned, is going to be on purchasing cards. We do a purchasing card audit every year. We expect to put such on the plan for 2015 also. Chris Pike says it best as far as what he's seen and what I've seen as far as transparency, as far as knowing that procedures in place are good and people get questioned about their P cards. Everyone knows it's being looked at, and then at least once a year have the internal auditor come in and oversee all the other oversight that's going on. That's what I plan to do next quarter. Be glad to take any questions.
Thanks, Bill.
Bill, thanks for your diligent audit work, and I'm very glad to see the very good audit report that you've given us. And just for the record, for anyone listening to this, you do report to council as opposed to staff, and that's an important internal control mechanism with that. So thank you for coming before us to give us the audit report. Let me ask you, though, this question, and I haven't asked you ahead of time because I really want to get you right off the surprise here, is there anything about Dunwoody finances, not the financial report necessarily, but just the whole scope of what you do here in Dunwoody, or procedures that keep you awake and that you would incorporate into your audit if the budget for your work was at a higher level? Is there anything at all that you say, gee, if the scope of my work and the scope of my budget was a little more, we really should touch on this? Is there anything that causes you any concern whatsoever here in Dunwoody?
As it turns out, I had a similar question this afternoon at the audit committee meeting, and I said for next year's audit plan, I think I should revisit the municipal court account. If you recall, one of my first audits was in the municipal court, and their accounting, if you go back to the first year of the financial statements being issued to the city, getting their numbers into the CAFR was the very last thing that allowed those reports to be issued. And then I recommended that a reconciliation be done of the cash and the accounting every month thereafter. And the municipal court started doing it quarterly. And anything I hear about municipal court is they're, let's say this, they're barely passing. They got a barely passing grade, and there's been a change again in the municipal court clerk. So I don't know of anything that's wrong, but it's just an area that I answered this afternoon that I would like to put as the first quarter audit for next year, and that's what we're planning to do.
And is the scope of the budget that we give you, is it sufficient for what you see in the government? You've been doing this a good while.
So in municipal court is probably the only thing that I have looked at previously that I think a deeper dive would be needed. And if I did it under my current budget arrangement with you, I might have to count it as 2 audits. I typically do 8 audits a year. 4 is the financial review done every quarter, and then 4 others. So the municipal court could probably use a deeper dive. Also this afternoon, the audit committee thought that the area of permits and inspections could use a look, and to date I haven't done any work in that area, and that made sense. Don't know anything's right, wrong, or indifferent from a procedural standpoint, but no more after doing work in that area.
If you discover that additional funding is needed, something's keeping you awake, I hope you'll report back to us and let us know and let us take appropriate action.
Rest assured that I will.
Thank you.
Bill, I'm not sure if this next area is an area of your expertise, but let me run it by you. The City of Atlanta had an issue with overtime and then cashing out that overtime at some point. Would the audit committee be able to look at personnel records in the sense of the overtime being charged to the city and or this personnel aspects of overtime compensation?
Yes, that'd be fine. We'll look at it.
Okay, at some point, some personnel benefit and or overtime compensation, just some review. It probably doesn't have to be in depth. It's probably easy to figure out, but I haven't looked at those type of numbers. I just figured it'd be something to run by you.
That makes sense as to something to put on the list, and many an organization has had trouble with overtime.
But again, your fourth quarter, the procurement card is an important one, so thank you for making that a priority next quarter.